Hi everyone, it's Natasha from AxelsonAcademy. I am back to continue our stories on Christmas owls. And last time I was with you, we read The Christmas Owl, a delightful story of a little saw-whet owl that gets stuck in the Rockefeller Christmas tree. When he's rescued, he's taken to a rehab center and then released back into the wild. This is such a fabulous book, but other authors have created other wonderful books like this about our little friend Rockefeller the owl. So today I am reading book number 2 about Rocky the Owl, Little Owl in the Big City. Now, a couple things that you might want to just clue in on as you're reading this. One is the point of view. So in our first book, we have a first-person point of view as Rockefeller the owl is telling what it's like as he gets stuck in the Christmas tree. And in this book, we're getting that first-person point of view also. And Rockefeller is going to tell his story once again. However, it's a very different perspective. Even though they're both first person, he feels quite different about the experience of taking this trip in the Christmas tree to New York. So, you might want students to focus on how Rockefeller is feeling throughout this and then do a comparison of the two books that way. Little Owl in the Big City. In the first book that we read, at the end of the story, there's a page about the author and then a connection to the true story of the Rockefeller owl. However, in this book, they have an initial page that tells a little bit about the story. So I'm just going to read that to you quickly here. This is based on the true story of a northern saw-whet owl found in the boughs of the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center in 2020. The tree came from Oneonta, New York, 175 miles away. After being cared for at a wildlife center, the owl was released in a conifer forest in upstate New York. The northern saw-whet is one of the smallest owls in the United States. It is famous for its nomadic ways. At nesting time, females take care of the eggs, while males keep the family well supplied with food, usually mice and other small rodents. But except for nesting periods, males tend to roam instead of staying in just one place. And then we start our story. Did you see the newspaper? There was a story about me. That was the big news. They found me in a tree. Found me, but I was never lost. I wanted to be in the tree because I wanted to be in the big city. I wanted to see the tall buildings and the lights and hear the sounds of people talking and yelling and singing and all the noises of the cars and the buses and the taxis. I wanted to be in the middle of all the excitement and the noise and the lights. You see, I am from a small town upstate. It doesn't have a lot of people or tall buildings or cars or buses or taxis. It has small buildings and a few cars and buses and maybe a taxi or two. It doesn't have bright lights or big noises. It is pretty and quiet and dark and peaceful, but it is not exciting. That tree, it is the chosen tree, chosen to light up the big city at Christmas. It is a special tree. Every year, a crew comes from the big city to measure it, to see if it is tall enough to stand beside the tall buildings, and strong enough to hold the lights and the decorations, and big enough to carry the dreams of Christmas for everyone who comes to see it. When the crew came this fall, the robins heard them say, "It's time. Time to bring the tree to the big city for Christmas." The robins told the chickadees, and the chickadees told the sparrows, and the sparrows told the squirrels, and everyone knows they can't keep quiet. That's how I found out. So I packed my tiny bag with a couple of tiny snacks, and I burrowed deep into the branches of the special tree, and I waited. And one morning, some people came and they wrapped the tree very carefully. It was very warm and snuggly. And away we went, onto the highway and into the big city. What a fun ride! When we got there, they unwrapped the tree and folded up the blankets. They fluffed out the branches, and there was the city. And the lights, and the people, and the buildings, and the noise. I wasn't lost. Even though the newspapers said I was found, I got to the big city, and that is where I wanted to be. And I could see the tall buildings, and hear the noises, and watch the people hurrying everywhere, talking and yelling and singing. And as I sat on the tippy-top branch of the special tree, watching the people and the buildings and the lights and the cars and the buses and taxis, I was happy and grateful and so lucky. And after sitting on the tippy-top branch of the special tree for a few days, I knew it was time to go home, to my quiet town with its tiny houses and just a few buses and cars and a taxi or two. So I packed up my teeny tiny bag and picked up some gifts to bring home to my friends, some worms for the robins and some seeds for the chickadees and even some nuts for the chattery squirrels, because you know they would all be sad if they didn't get a present. And off I went, home to the tiny town and the little trees and all my friends. I liked my trip to the big city, but I am glad to be home, for now anyway. So you could stop right there with our first read of The Christmas Owl and this book, create a Venn diagram and compare these two. Or if you're really into Christmas owls now, like and subscribe, because our next story is our third Christmas Owl book, where we get yet another version of the Rockefeller owl. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.